and McLean. Dead Coach's Corner.
You're listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast with your host, Andy Plymer.
For someone to explain.
Bringing you up-to-date coaching concepts from the world of rugby.
The distinction between these mandatory.
Sharing ideas to make the game better.
Okay, welcome to episode number 20 of the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. I'm your host, Andy Plymer, and I'm joined today by a very special guest in Michael Cheika. Michael is the head coach for the Wallabies, and we met when he was over here in Canada at the Rugby Canada Coaching Conference, and he agreed to kindly come on the show. After a successful playing career with Randwick for over 300 games and 7 Shute Shield victories, and a few seasons in France and Italy, Michael moved into coaching and started in Italy and returning to his home club of Randwick for several seasons. He then headed over to Leinster for a very successful 5 years, guiding them to their first European title in 2009. Had a brief stint in Stade Francais and then took over at the New South Wales Waratahs, and they secured the Super 15 title in his second year in charge. He's currently in the middle of his 2016 Rugby Championship preparations, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show, Michael, so welcome.
Thanks a lot, mate. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So busy 15 years of coaching there. How's the ride been?
Has it been that long, really?
Seems like it.
But it's been, yeah, like I've it's been really enjoyable. I've never really thought about it, like it's going to be. I never want to be what I still don't consider that I am a career coach. I just think something I tried and I enjoyed, and next thing you know, that's what you're doing. You're doing it.
Yeah, it's great, and to wake up every morning and do what you love doing must be pretty sweet.
It is very nice.
Yeah,
I
awesome.
certainly think that's really the best part of it. You know what I mean? Because you get to do something that you love, and that's we're really lucky, or I'm really lucky, I know, to be in that situation. So mate, all going well.
Yeah.
We can enjoy it for this year as well.
Yeah, beauty. All right, so going back to your first couple of roles there with you coached a bit in Italy and then came back to Randwick. What do you reckon were some of the key kind of learning areas for your coaching there, from like just experiences that you went, right, I can't do it that way, I've got to do it this way from now on?
Yeah, mate, I think the big things for me were, first of all, I never really considered coaching when I was a player. So I just had the opportunity to go one day, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to take this, and I went to Italy. So I found out that I really actually quite enjoyed it when I went there. Now, I was coaching in another language. Now, I speak that language, but it showed me straight away how important that communication is. Because even though I spoke the language, and then again when I went and coached in France later on, you speak the language so you can get your message across. But rugby's a lot about inspiring. Coaching's a lot about inspiring and motivating as well. So in the key moments, sometimes the language barrier could get in the way, and that's really important. And that tells me that communication is probably the most important thing in coaching, you know what I mean? So you might have the skills, the technical part or whatever, but you've got to always get your message across in a way that, the people that you're coaching are understanding why and how. And I think that really was the first experience I had, and it framed a lot of what I wanted to do, how I did things going forward.
Yeah, no, I suppose that's even relevant when you're coaching in your mother tongue too.
Very much so. I think it's more relevant then.
Yeah.
Like you've got an excuse when you're in a foreign language.
Exactly.
You don't have an excuse when you're in your mother tongue. You know what I mean? And that's really the key. And I suppose no matter whether you're trying to express technical matters or tactical or mental or physical, you've got to be able to make it something that someone wants to do, and therefore you've got to be able to enjoy it. You've got to make them enjoy it, but also understand that it's an important part of the preparation as well.
Yeah, right. Okay. So after that, you had two pretty different European experiences. One at Leinster, where they're probably ready to build a statue of you in downtown Dublin, And then a couple of years at Stade Francais. What were the main differences there, and what were some of the takeaways from those two experiences?
Well, mate, obviously, the main difference is the I suppose the cultural piece.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Anglo-Saxon side to the Latin side, and how the difference. It was a great. The Stade Francais was a great experience for me too, because it was a little bit different because I was going to have a year off after Leinster.
Yeah.
And I was actually going to live in Paris anyway. I've always had an attachment. I played there, and we were about to have the twins. I had one child already, a young child, and we were about to have twins, and we we're just going to take a year off. And then the opportunity came to coach Stade Francais at the last minute, and I probably didn't do my own due diligence around the situation of the club and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first mistake. But then after that, even though it probably didn't go as well as I would like it to, it's still a very invaluable time that I spent there, because it really made me, when the club had big financial trouble, I had to learn a whole different part of coaching, which was managing that situation. We recruited a staff of guys and trying to keep that happen. And then also the new owner comes in, all that type of stuff. Also understanding your place within the organisation in a different systems, Ireland federated model, where the Irish Rugby Union was in charge of the provinces. Really, provinces still have a lot of autonomy, and you work within that structure. And then you go over to France, private ownership, and dealing with direct reports up, and then an owner or two owners in my instance who have different relationships with all different types of people, players, etc. Trying to keep everyone in a line, and in what we're doing, so that the owner, the chairman, the CEO, myself, the captain, staying in that order, in that line. And then it's not easy to do over in France when it's private ownership, but I'm still obviously very good friends with the owner of the club now. And even though, he let me go in the end, because I wanted certain things in the team that he didn't want. But at the end of the day, he puts his hard-earned cash in and pays for the team. So you've got to respect that. He's putting his money where his mouth is, and he's allowed to do that. So you've got to understand as a coach where you sit within, just like you would in any other company, I suppose, that you know that going into the job, so you've got to accept that.
Yeah, I suppose that's another skill you learn too, is just managing those expectations about what you can achieve in that environment.
Well, managing upwards was just as important as managing downwards.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's their key relationships, and they've got to be built, and that makes your team strong in the end, So, look, I'm still a fan of the Stade Francais, and love the time I spent there, and a lot of respect for the owner there, Thomas Savard. And then in Ireland, obviously, it was a brilliant experience. It was tough there too. Like, there's some times where it wasn't going as well as we wanted it to. And, the standard, all the noise comes down, this is not happening, you guy. But, mate, it comes down, that's probably what it teaches me the most, is that it taught me the most in both of those places about self-belief. You prepare well, believe in what you're doing, and don't worry about the results. They'll just be a consequence of what you've done. And that's where I really learned that over that little block there in between those. In the last couple of years, in that little time, that time I spent Ireland, France, really taught me that.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and I listened to a couple of Irish rugby podcasts, and they can be tough on their coaches, the Irish fans, for sure.
You're not wrong. And, mate, I think, that is a tough part for coaches, but it goes, I don't get that stressed about it, because but as long as you know you're doing the best you can.
Yeah.
If your team doesn't do any good, doesn't mean you're a bad person or you've done something illegal or something like that. You just, you can only do your best, and that's the goal, is to do your best, prepare the best, do your absolute best. But the wins and the losses will then accrue according to what you do and how you perform.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that kind of leads me into my next piece there. One of the things that came out in your presentation at the Rugby Canada Coaching Conference is the importance that you place on team culture. do you feel that team culture can be the difference between winning and losing? And what have been some of your favourite team culture activities you've done? You mentioned a few that you did with the Waratahs.
Yeah, I suppose it's a really important part. It's not the only thing, but
Yeah.
it is probably once you've assembled your team, because recruitment and all those things are important. Identity leads to the culture that goes around the team, and I think that the players, once you've got that set up, it helps you recruit, it helps you prepare your training, it helps you do everything, And I'm a big believer that that's just as important, if not more, than the tactical and the technical side of things, which are important too. Don't get me wrong. I think that they're very important parts of the puzzle. But we're playing team sports because we want to be a part of a team, and therefore having a good value system within the team and a clear identity helps you to, I suppose, surpass your potential, because you want players to be looking to make the most of their potential, and then by the advent of the team and the coach, help them go beyond their potential when they need to over the 80 minutes. That's very much something that the team culture can help you do. Not to mention the fact that it's somewhere you want to be a part of once you respect and you love that culture.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you mentioned the one I liked the most that you talked about was the family trees that you asked the players from the Waratahs group to do. Can you talk a bit about that?
Oh yeah, I think it was just something to get. One of these, we did just an exercise on everyone, doing their family tree. It's not something that you would do every day. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And it starts to make you think. And then one of the big things about all of these activities, mate, whether it's that one or anything else, is it gets the players in the team thinking about being honest in front of each other, and that's a real key. You know what I mean? Once players in the team culture start to get honest, like truly honest with each other, it makes a big difference. Again, it grows a lot of respect, within the players, and it's a nice environment to be a part of. I think that's the important thing. It's a really nice environment to be a part of.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's one of the fun parts of coaching, I think, is watching that playing group kind of form and gel and go through some tough times together, but also kind of battle together. And if you that culture piece is the glue that keeps them together.
Yeah, I believe that. Everyone's got a different philosophy, and I don't ever pretend to think that my way is the right way. So I just think for me and my coaching, the way I would coach, or I've happened to coach, that suits me. It suits the way I like to do it.
Yeah, right. Okay, so you're 2 years or so into the Wallabies role now. What have been some of the key coaching lessons that you've learnt so far in that role?
Oh man, I think it's very different. It's very different because you're not got like a pre-season build up and all of that. You've got to think of as a selector almost for half the year, and then as a coach for the other. Don't try to think too much as a coach right now, because the Super Rugby teams are doing all that work. You know,
exactly.
And they've got their coaches there and all that type of stuff. But I just think that it's about really knowing your players, because you don't have them for as long. And as soon as you get them, you're straight into footy. So you don't have the chance. Well, you've got to make sure you get to know the players inside out, and you have to know a rather large group of players, because it's not the 30 that you'd have in Super Rugby. It's maybe a group of 50 or 60 that you're following. And to try to get the most out of those guys, you've got to try to learn about them. And you're not always with them, so it's not always easy to build that relationship. So that's something I think is really important, But of course, you've got to have technical stuff. But you're very fortunate because you've got the choice of the best players in the country. So you don't have to do any recruitment. That's the best that your nation's producing. So you've got to make sure you're selecting the best you can, and then picking the right guys to do the right jobs. In your team.
Yeah, so that must have been a big part of what you were doing with the playing group when you took a large portion of them over to Cockatoo Island just recently.
Yeah, that's very much it. We have these things morning after meets and squad rock. So sometimes earlier in the year, for example, there was a few derby matches.
Oh yeah, there's a couple of beauties.
We had a group of 60. Yeah, we'd get the guys from the squad to get, so if the Waratahs are playing the Brumbies,
yeah, that was a good
one. The guys
one.
from the squad get together the next day, have breakfast together. We talk a bit of footy. We get the chance to socialise with each other, the day after they belted each other around a little bit. So that's, I think, a very good way to practice some of the values that are important to us. So, the winners bring their humility, the losers bring a certain resilience, because it's not easy to back up and meet the guy who beat you up the night before.
Yeah.
And you've got to be resilient around that. So I like doing that with the players. I think it's it makes them understand a bit more how to manage the emotional side of that, and also build good relationships when the team does come together and play, and that's very important within the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so on to the World Cup. The World Cup just gone, obviously. Was there ever a time in the World Cup where you watched a game and you looked at it and you go, "Yeah, that's something that I was coaching, and we worked really hard on that, and now it's transferring to the game, to the field"?
Oh, yeah. Look, you'd like to think so, but we're talking about some of the best players going around. So
yeah.
They've got a lot of smarts. You just got to put them together with some shape and say, this is what we're playing, this is how we're playing, this is what, and get them to understand why they're playing, and then let them go on their merry way. I don't feel like as a coach I have the right to say, well, yeah, I did this. I made them play like that.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? I sort of don't think like that. I think that it's the combination of guys together that create the style. We certainly, of course, we have a sort of shape, or we have strategy that we talk about, etc. But at the end of the day, players make that come to life, and they probably put their own little twist on it as well.
Yeah.
So in my situation, which is probably a little bit different than if I was coaching, a junior team or a sub, a club team or whatever, where you probably work on more things on a day-to-day basis, and a coach probably coaching those teams would see that more. And for me, it's more about, I suppose, when I watch the games, enjoying the guys, doing what I know they can do, achieving the potential that they have around their skill, whether it be a contact skill or an attacking skill, or whatever it might be, kicking skill, whatever it is, and doing it consistently right. You know what I mean? Doing it consistently level that they want to. I think that's when you've prepared well, because they're consistently doing good things.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And what about you personally as a coach? What are your favourite areas or area of the game to coach?
Mate, a touch footy before training normally. I think that's
carve it up.
That's where I'm good at commentating, and I'm not very good at playing it. But no, look, I like it all. I like a bit of everything. I like the attack, and I like the contact part of the game as well.
Yeah.
But I'm very lucky. I've got good coaching staff. We're growing together. We're all very young. I'm not really that young in age, but young in experience at international level.
Yeah.
And as are Nathan and Stephen and Mario, we're all pretty raw around international coaching. So we're learning along the way as well about what it means, compared to guys like Steve Hansen and and Eddie Jones and guys like that who have coached at the international level for a fair while. We're still all pretty raw, So we're still trying to get our head around how we can be best at that job. But at the same time, I think being part of training, we do a lot of training stuff with the guys too, especially a lot of the physical stuff. If they're running hills, we'll go run hills. If they're doing, different preparations, we'll do that with them. And I think it's just a bit of to, understand the balance between coach and comrade, and I don't know, I like being involved in all parts of the game. I've had to improve in my knowledge of the set pieces, and since I've got, especially back to rugby in Australia, because it's an area we haven't focused on as much.
Absolutely, yeah.
With the Waratahs and then also with the Australian team, I've really tried to improve my knowledge and understanding of and how I coach those parts of the game and the importance that I put on them. And so that's been that comes with people. So having someone like Mario around has really helped doing that. Has helped me do.
Yeah, that must be great. Just chatting about all that stuff and digging deep into some of the issues or areas that you're not comfortable with or not confident with or new ideas.
Well, coaches have got to be first to admit that that's all. I need to be better at that. Not that I'm not good at that. I need to be better at that, and not necessarily even to go and coach it, just to know it, especially if you're the head coach. Like you can't just. I don't feel like I can just. Say, oh, mate, you do that, and I won't worry about it. I've got to think about how I can add to that. The more people that are talking about it, the better the outcome's going to be.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, and if someone was to watch you coach, what are they going to see and hear? How is your session going to look just in general?
They're pretty fiery more often than not. Like there's a lot of. We like to think there's a lot of pace and intensity in there.
Yeah.
Also, not just in the session, but also from the coaches. And there won't be a lot of talk. That most of the preparation's done beforehand. We're lucky in that way we can do that. A lot of guys who might be listening to this, who are coaches, have got just the time they're out on the field, so they have to spend that time, instructing or giving information out. But we like to think that that's our modus operandi, it's our style. We're well prepared. We go out, we train hard, and we're able to give good feedback on the run more than anything. Stopping everyone through lots of details. So, and we like it to be. We're not worried. We encourage technical excellence, but also not. At the same time, we wouldn't be too down on people trying things or making a mistake, as long as the technique is right and the intent is right. So, it's a bit of a summary, I suppose, quickly about how it look, from a philosophical point of view, more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and Eddie Jones coming over to Australia. That's going to be a fun time. Yeah,
look, mate, he's done really well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here and overseas, and as much as it's a lot of people are talking about that part of it.
Be a beat up.
I think no, it's not a beat up. That's good. The more noise about the game, the better.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the game's decided on the field by the players. It doesn't matter what the coaches do. So, but obviously we're good friends, and I respect him a lot. We played footy together, and I would have taken advice from him growing up coaching. So at different times, and he's always been very forthcoming with that for me. So, I'm really looking forward to it, but more because it's great. England have improved a lot, since the World Cup, and it'll be really good for us. I think it's important for us this year. Last year went okay, even though we could have gone better because we could have won the final. And there was a few other opportunities there that we missed out on. And what we need to do this year is improve our rugby, improve the type of play and improve some of the other areas. And having the number one team from Europe come over and play us in 3 tests in a row is a really good way for us to say, right, this is how we're going to improve and show it on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree, and it's just that great clash, the Wallabies versus England. Everyone loves it, and it'll be huge.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we always close the show off with the same 4 questions. First question: when you were a kid growing up, who was some of the rugby players that you liked watching the most?
Ooh, rugby players I like watching the most. I was brought up as a league kid.
Yeah,
right?
me too.
I probably watched a bit more league.
Yeah.
But then if I thought about that, and you look across the players that may have crossed over both codes back in the day, I think being a number 8, Ray Price was always a player.
Yeah, absolutely.
Crossed over both codes, brilliantly tough and, hard. And I think, I suppose someone who's played both league and union, that would be a guy that, is a favourite of mine. And, I always used to like watching a player called Arthur Beaton because he had the offload and lovely offload. So that was always good to watch him.
Yeah, that was the heyday of rugby league back then. You're talking the classic Parramatta, Canterbury, Bankstown kind of battles, and even though Arthur Beaton, he was East, wasn't he?
He was East, and then there was a period there of, I think, Manly and Cronulla and Manly, or Manly and Parramatta. There was a few good rivalries back then too. So there are some great players around.
Absolutely.
And same in rugby too. You know what I mean? There were so many good players. It's not like I watched this guy growing up, but he finished when I started playing Mark Ella.
Yeah.
Right. So then when he made a comeback, I was able to play a season with him at Randwick, and that was pretty exceptional too, just for the information the guy's got in his head and the instinct around how he prepared himself, And then you look for rugby players, you can't get for. I always look to my own position, I suppose. So a guy like Mark Lone, or those types of guys are pretty impressive characters.
Yeah, right. And what about now? Who, like in international rugby, who do you think's doing some good work on the field?
Ooh, that's
probably got to be careful with that one.
Yeah, well, no. Look, mate, I'm not scared to say when there's good players. Like I'd leave my own team out of it for now.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
But I think if I looked overseas and like so many good international players. You know what I mean? I actually still think that Sonny Bill Williams hasn't hit his peak in rugby as yet. I think he can go further, and he'll have really good opportunity to do that in this season. I think he's
it's pretty scary.
Outstanding player. Sorry?
That's pretty scary.
Yeah, well, he's an outstanding player in both codes. He's done so well, and I think he'll do well again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think there's some good players coming up that are starting to find it. We know pretty much the traditional guys who are thereabouts, but I think there's some young players that are starting to come through in different countries. But I'm a fan of a lot of the Argentinian players.
Me too.
Footy, some of their back rowers are nice players, aggressive, and their backs have got speed. And I just think there's. We know that New Zealand are always going to produce great players too. So I think there's a smattering of them around the world coming through. It's hard to know when you look at it in an analytical point of view. You see those players stand out a bit more when you're watching them just as an out-and-out spectator, you know what I mean? And I think that there's some really good players amongst them. I've been very impressed with the young second rower that's coming through for England. And
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Just good energy and youth, and I really think he's been a really nice addition to the English team.
For sure.
And I think he'll make a big difference when he comes down here on tour.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, and what about our third question? Who's one of your colleagues, a high-profile coach who you admire the work they do?
Oh, mate, that's a tough one, because you always obviously you see the players, the coaches who are coaching all the top teams. So, but I really think that Vern Cotter's done a really good job.
Yeah.
Everywhere he's gone, he's done a good job as a coach. I don't know him very well.
Yeah.
But he's Scotland playing really nice brand of footy.
Yeah.
And they're playing, like I said, nice rugby, and improving all the time too. And I think he probably, it was a big choice for him to leave Claremont to go to Scotland, and I think he's making those posts a winner so far.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And last question: Who's someone maybe lesser known with a lower profile that you think deserves a mention for the work they do?
Oh, right, okay. Maybe, well, I would say, this is, and I suppose it's relevant. I suppose some of the Canadian people would know about it as well. I like the work that Tim Walsh has done, the coach of the women's team.
Absolutely.
They probably don't get accolades as they are now, because they're headed towards an Olympic medal, hopefully.
Yeah,
but,
fingers crossed. Yeah.
He's been improving that team over as like a period. He's done it for a few years, and he's worked to a plan, and he's getting those results. But he also has the development of the game in mind as well, and I think he's done an outstanding job with that team. And they're in a good position now where they could win the World Series this year, and then of course the big event of the Olympics coming up, and probably not that known, wouldn't be a household name to everyone. So I think it is worth a mention.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree. Okay, well, thanks very much, Michael, for tapping into your busy schedule. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and it's been a great chat, and I've really enjoyed it. And like I said at the conference, as a rusted on Wallabies fan, I'm just stoked with the direction the jersey's going, and thanks to you and all the other coaches for all the work you've been doing.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Cheers. Okay, so there you have it. World Rugby Coach of the Year, Michael Cheika. I'm stoked that I got to chat to him, and I got a bunch out of it, and hopefully you did too. So before I sign off, I just wanted to mention a rugby coaching blog that one of the listeners emailed me some information on. I thought some people might get some benefit out of it. It's written by a young coach. He's 19 years old. His name's Benny Lynch, and he contacted me just wanting to talk about the blog and saying that he listens to the show, and that he's a young coach chipping away, and has decided to blog his adventures as being a new up-and-coming coach. So if you want to check it out, it's bennysrugbycoaching.wordpress.com. It's BENNYSRUGBYCOACHING.wordpress.com. And I think I'll have a look in every week and see what he's writing about. And I think it's a good spot that we can learn from each other, and no matter what age and what experience level. Coming up on the show, next episode, back to another member of the Wallabies organisation, this time former player Ben Darwin. We talk about his company Gainline, and it's a really, really interesting chat. I really enjoyed this one, and that's going to be out in 2 weeks' time. After that, we go back to some North American guests. We're talking about attacking trends in rugby, backline attack, and general attacking trends, and also coaching girls sevens as well. So keep an eye out for those ones. And as always, thanks again for listening, and I hope you're enjoying the stuff, and keep a lookout for future episodes. All right, cheers. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review via iTunes and keep listening for the next episode. You can also follow us on Twitter at RugbyCoachSCNR or via the website at therugbycoachescorner.com. Until next time, keep sharing ideas to make the game better.